Today on Investigate TV Plus, her infant daughter died from an infection she says went undiagnosed in the emergency room.
Rebecca didn't get her chance to live.
So she transformed her heartbreak into a mission to ensure sick and injured children receive expert care.
I'm trying to make sure that every child gets the best possible healthcare so they have their chance to live.
We take an in-depth look at the lack of pediatric emergency readiness at ERs across the U.S. and the affordable solutions some doctors say would save lives.
Plus, firefighters face life or death situations during a call, but a quiet killer lurking beyond the flames could be their biggest threat. We examine firefighter-related cancers and explore solutions igniting awareness and leading to change.
And a teacher goes the extra mile for her students.
I packed one of my students' lunches for 2 years just because she didn't have someone to pack her lunch.
Both inside and outside the classroom.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus. As a parent, there's perhaps nothing more terrifying than the feeling when your child is sick or injured and a trip to the emergency room is filled with fear and uncertainty. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. For some families, the ER is a last resort and often a lifeline. But a new study found the majority of emergency departments in the U.S. are not fully prepared to meet the needs of pediatric patients.
Reporter Heather Graff talks to the doctors behind this research and shows you why they say an affordable and life-saving solution already exists.
My daughter Rebecca Ava was born July 13th, 2006. She was born healthy, she was beautiful.
When Phyllis Rabinowitz took her baby girl home from the hospital, she had no idea her family's joy would be fleeting.
Unfortunately, by the end of the day, we felt that she was having very alarming symptoms.
Symptoms that prompted a panicked trip to the emergency room.
She was not feeding well, she was not breathing well.
But Phyllis says doctors in the ER sent her daughter back home.
They thought it was a common cold.
And just a few days later,
it changed our lives forever.
Rebecca was gone.
At 9 days old. We called the ambulance and we rushed back to the emergency room, and there was nothing left to do because the virus that had taken over her body just moved that fast.
Phyllis says an autopsy later revealed Rebecca had died from a viral infection that went undiagnosed in the ER and therefore untreated.
We quickly learned that many emergency rooms aren't prepared for children. It's causing deaths.
Are children dying unnecessarily because of this?
The answer is yes.
It's a phenomenon Dr. Nathan Cooperman has been researching for years. He's the chief academic officer at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. And while ERs and pediatric hospitals like this one are specially equipped to treat kids, he says that is not the norm in many community hospitals across the country. The National Pediatric Readiness Project evaluates ERs on criteria that include the availability of child-size equipment, along with pediatric-specific protocols and training. High pediatric readiness defined as scoring at least 88 out of 100 on that assessment.
I don't want parents to panic, but this is important.
Cooperman's latest study, in partnership with Dr. Craig Newgard of Oregon Health and Science University, analyzed data from nearly 5,000 emergency departments nationwide and found just 17% had that high level of readiness. In other words, 83% of those emergency rooms are not fully prepared to care for children.
Each year in the United States, about 8,000 children die after presenting to the emergency department. And our estimate is probably 25% of those deaths could be prevented if the hospital moved to the high readiness state.
So more than 2,000
More than 2,000 children per year, exactly.
Researchers also used predictive models to determine what it would take to bridge that gap. And this map illustrates what Cooperman considers to be eye-opening results. The estimated annual cost to reach universal high pediatric readiness ranges from just $0 to $12 per child, depending on the state, for a total of about $207 million each year, to cover every ER in the U.S.
$200 million a year is what we would call budget dust. It's affordable, very affordable.
To better understand how it's so affordable, he points to this checklist that provides critical but cost-effective ways to improve an ER's pediatric readiness score.
One of the most important things is what we call a PEC, P-E-C-C, a Pediatric Emergency Care Coordinator. That is, having somebody in every emergency department whose job is just to make sure that you have the protocols in place, you have all the equipment necessary. That is a very, very high return on investment.
And that caught your attention.
It did.
Tell me about that.
I'm glad this study came out to show us the gaps.
Dr. Steve English is medical director of the ER at Jamestown Regional Medical Center, about 100 miles outside Fargo, North Dakota. And in a rural area like this, he admits high pediatric readiness can be difficult to achieve.
Turnover is a big part of it. It's hard to recruit people to rural North Dakota.
Despite those challenges, the staff here recently began working to better prepare for their youngest patients. This color-coded pediatric cart, perhaps one of the simplest of the recommended changes.
We open a drawer and the specific equipment is there already.
They also convinced hospital administrators to invest in certain youth-specific supplies, and Dr. English himself is now trained as the Pediatric Emergency Care Coordinator. He says all of it helped raise the ER's pediatric readiness score by 14 points in just a matter of months.
Not where we want to be quite yet, but I think we're definitely better prepared.
A success story in North Dakota. And back in Washington, D.C., Dr. Cooperman hopes policymakers will also be compelled to take action.
I think the federal government or state governments do need to be involved. And this is a roadmap for legislators to say, hey, in your state, you can do this by investing this amount per year.
This is my memory box of my daughter, Rebecca.
Until then, Phyllis Rabinowitz says she'll keep sharing Rebecca's story.
I never got to know her. I never got to see her grow up. It's 18 years later, but I feel like it was yesterday.
18 years of grief and 18 years of advocacy. But after learning about this new research, she feels real change is finally within reach.
Let's do this. Let's do this now. We can.
That study was funded in part by the National Institutes of Health, and we asked the NIH lead on emergency medical services for children what she views as the biggest takeaway.
I think the component related to the cost is really quite alarming to demonstrate that it is not highly cost burdensome to make pediatric readiness a reality across our nation. And this is, I think, an important take home for most people to realize that while kids represent about 25% of our global population, they are 100% of our future.
The mother in Heather's story founded a nonprofit called Our Baby Foundation in honor of her daughter, Rebecca. The organization often provides grant money to help hospitals with training.
They're advocating for legislation that would federally mandate high pediatric readiness in ERs. Right now, Delaware is the only state where every emergency department meets that standard. Still ahead, firefighters risk their lives in the line of duty every day, but in doing so, they face a long-term threat to their health. We examine the link between fighting fires and cancer and the initiatives to decrease the risk by increasing prevention. Then later, want to know how your kid is doing in school, but when you ask them, crickets.
We show you how to be your own investigator by using a federal law to gain access to your child's school records. Firefighters put their lives on the line to ensure the safety of people and property. However, the dangers they face on the job go beyond battling raging fires.
Burning materials can unleash a soup of toxic chemicals and heavy metals, such as benzene and formaldehyde. Even some of the foams firefighters use to put out fires contain PFAS, or forever chemicals, which are known to cause cancer and other serious health problems. These first responders are not only exposed to hazards when fighting a fire, but also afterwards because toxins can cling to their gear.
We begin our in-depth coverage with reporter Avery Martinez as he examines this health threat to firefighters and solutions to make their jobs safer.
Tina Misi was a veteran firefighter who passed only 8 weeks after her diagnosis. Her chief and doctors believe she developed cancer on the job from environmental risks fire crews face every day. Cancer is the leading cause of line-of-duty deaths for firefighters, and the race is on to protect them before it's too late.
We're always going to lose firefighters to cancer.
But maybe we can limit how many. The problem? There are other dangers in a fire aside from flames. Specifically, what is burning up in the blaze, which contain carcinogens or cancer-causing materials.
Tina would have been in that cloud. She would have been pumping the truck. You do everything you can, but you're trying to control something that just can't be controlled.
The longer they're in the fire or around them, the higher the risk.
The exposure is the same, regular, constant exposure to firefighting, the fumes, the exhaust, all the chemicals.
The impact of cancer on firefighters is surprising.
No, that's not something you would ever think of.
Even to the people who've made a career studying cancer. But a number of studies, international papers, statistics, and other data point to a strong link between cancer deaths and exposure during firefighting. Now experts are ringing the alarm bells about cancer risks for firefighters.
Is it any less of a risk for any firefighter anywhere?
Absolutely not. The firefighters all face the same risk. We all face the same types of smoke.
Like now retired Fire Chief Greg Brown, head of the Missouri Firefighter Critical Illness Pool, providing support to fighters suffering from a number of cancers.
43 years ago, did you ever think cancer was going to be a major risk, a major loss of life?
Absolutely not. There was a lot of firefighters back then, we used to call them smoke eaters, that didn't always wear their masks. That's what the old timers did, and they didn't know any better.
Not wearing those masks and continuing to wear unclean gear that was carrying around carcinogens had an impact.
All this increase accumulate over time in firefighters and increase their risk of developing cancer.
In a few short years, the number of cancers covered by the insurance pool has grown as more research shows a link between firefighting and multiple cancers.
And could that list grow even further?
Absolutely. I expect it to.
Firefighters are more likely to have mesothelioma and bladder cancer. There are no screening tests for those at the moment.
But regular checkups for other cancers can help catch symptoms early, which is crucial to treatment and recovery.
Do you hope one day that this won't even be a concern for firefighters? Can it not be a concern?
I don't think it can ever not be a concern. There's always going to be fires.
But there's a hope that better firefighting gear and attitudes to safety will help future firefighters protect themselves. Melville Fire, Tina's home company, is planning to get each fighter a second set of vapor barrier gear, which is the highest rated against cancer.
And there's a commitment to that. There's a financial commitment to it because the gear is incredibly expensive, but it's worth every penny.
Good gear is great, but the real challenge is getting attitudes about firefighting to change and for smoke eaters to disappear.
It's got to stop. We got to change our industry.
To where our new recruits that come in, they won't know any better. This is what we do.
In days gone by, Melville firefighters might cough up black smoke, but today, crews take atmospheric readings for carcinogens and require gear to be cleaned as soon as fighters are back in the station, so that responders like Tina have a chance to beat their cancer and get back to doing their job. The Missouri Critical Pool even has buy-in from insurance companies, going from adversary to ally.
So we think we're doing good things, even when that industry sees what we're doing and they're going, hey, we're on to something here.
Still, Melville Fire will have a leader and a helmet missing where Tina Misi once manned the line.
That's what we'll always remember. How we'll remember her is that she was always striving to be better.
I'm reporter Kristen Crowley. Preventing firefighter deaths is exactly what one company says it is determined to do. Todd Leduc is deputy CEO of LifeScan, a company that gives physicals tailor-made to first responders. The annual 3-hour exam includes an EKG, blood work, stress test, mental health screening, and full body scan.
A significant number of the firefighters that we examine, on imaging, we see that the heart muscle is larger than a normal heart muscle.
But it's not just heart issues that LifeScan Physical is looking for. Liberty, Missouri Fire Department Assistant Chief Stephen Epperson says the exam found his kidney cancer.
I was back there doing my ultrasounds, and the tech was going about her business, and she said, "Steve, you got a pretty large cyst on your kidney."
Stephen had his kidney removed and is now cancer-free. LifeScan says it serves 650 departments across the U.S., and it's growing. Liberty Fire pays between $580 and $680 a person, costing the department up to $43,000 a year. The price tag for LifeScan varies depending on department location and size.
Our in-depth coverage on preventing firefighter deaths continues on investigatetv.com. Just type firefighter deaths in the search bar. It's a common and simple question parents ask their children: how are you doing in school? Good luck getting a straight response.
This may be the time to be your own investigator. We school you on the federal law that will help you get the answer. Then later, her actions make a difference.
Out of the classroom is kind of what makes her just even more phenomenal.
How a middle school teacher inspires students and parents. You don't have to wait for a report card or a call from a teacher to find out how your child is doing in school.
Reporter Josie Sturman shows us how you can be your own investigator by using a federal law to track their academic progress.
If you're a parent, you know getting anything out of your kid can be difficult after a long day in class. How was your day? Fine, Mom. But if you want actual information about their education, we're here to school you so you can find out everything you want to know. In this Be Your Own Investigator, we'll tell you what you need to understand to get access to your students' records. First, you should know there's a federal law on the books that deals with all of this. The feds, of course, love an acronym, so it's called FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA applies to all schools or colleges that get federal money. Basically, it says you have the right to inspect things in your student's file, from their grades and standardized test scores to disciplinary or attendance records and health reports. A few things, like records maintained by law enforcement that are attached to your school, are exempt from that law. FERPA says the school has to pony up the paperwork you request within 45 days, but generally they should be able to provide it pretty quickly. You may have to pay some fees if you want physical copies, but ask your district. Many districts have online portals you can sign up for, so you just log in and then a lot of this information is there anytime you want it. The law also puts limitations on who your students' information can be shared with, making sure their personally identifiable info isn't out in the world without your consent. They do have some exceptions though, so schools are allowed to share in certain situations without asking, including with institutions assisting with financial aid or if your student is transferring to a different school or moving on to college. It's important to point out that once your kid turns 18, all of those rights under FERPA shift from you as a parent to your student. So once they become an adult, they're the ones who are protected. But if you still claim your child as a dependent on your taxes, the Department of Education says you can still ask to take a peek at their school records, though not every university's policy will allow you to see them without your kid signing off. You can see what a college releases by finding their annual FERPA policy page on their website. So go ahead and ask your student how school is going. And if you get that one-word answer I'm used to hearing, FERPA may be your new best friend. With this Be Your Own Investigator, I'm Josie Sturman.
Up next, a teacher's lessons go beyond the classroom.
I always have snacks in my classroom, feminine products, hair ties, deodorant spray, all the things you could ever need.
How her acts of kindness inspire her students and their parents. On top of working to get a higher degree, Caroline Ryder is a science teacher who still finds time outside of school hours to meet the needs of students.
Reporter Ashley Hendricks shows us the lesson we could all learn from Ms. Ryder.
When she's not in the classroom,
walking around tucking them in,
you can find Miss Caroline Ryder somewhere around Chickahominy Middle.
All right, don't move.
These days, when school lets out, she's in the cafeteria preparing for the next school musical.
So we are doing Peter Pan Jr. This is my second year directing the musical, and I have a co-director who does the music because I actually have no musical skills at all.
But the former dancer is behind the choreography and designing costumes. During school hours, she helps her 7th graders get excited about science.
We're doing genetics right now, and just that moment where they figure it out and they get it, it's my favorite part.
Just out of the classroom is kind of what makes her just even more phenomenal.
Miss Ryder's friend, Lori Rozecki, has seen how much she's poured into students, including her own son.
Whether or not you're her student or not her student, she provides a space that children can come and just have a friend and have a confidant.
Ms. Ryder stays after school to review lessons and help with homework. And when yearbooks are too expensive for some parents, she has stepped in to cover the cost.
Helped a girl last year with a dress for a dance. I packed one of my students' lunches for 2 years just because she didn't have someone to pack her lunch. And it's not that she wasn't capable, it's just she needed someone, and I was that person. I always have snacks in my classroom, feminine products, hair ties, deodorant spray, all the things you could ever need.
She does it all, helping in any way possible.
We're fortunate in the county to have so many great teachers, but I just feel like she makes people feel seen, and that's what I wanted to do for her, is make her feel seen.
For Miss Ryder, the saying holds true: when you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
So I just try to be there for my students. I also just try to make sure I have everything they need, and so they're just my favorite part of being a teacher.
You know, students spend so much time at school with their teachers, and it's so nice to know that there are teachers like that who are just so caring and giving.
So many schools around the country where there's a couple of teachers that really make a difference with each student like that. Very nice.
Well, that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. Thanks for watching. On the next Investigate TV Plus, more students miss school as their parents struggle with food and housing costs.
My thoughts were ensure that I can cover the cost of the hotel, ensure that I can cover the 3 meals for today.
We take an in-depth look at chronic absenteeism, its connection to the affordable housing crisis, and how one school district is combating the problem.